All right, joining us now is a great guy with big Louisiana ties. You've been watching him on network for at least 8-9 years. He's been with the SEC network since 2014. The great Peter Burns. Peter, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. In fact, you can see I got my LSU logoed hat. I got a little state seal of Louisiana on me. So I'm always repping the home state and the home 225 area code when I can.
Well, I think a lot of people know, but for those who don't, you grew up in Port Allen, right?
Yeah, right across the river, the what gateway to the Western civilization. Remember, there used to be that famous sign back there. And I used to play t-ball right on those fields right across the bridge. So yeah, my parents both went to Port Allen. They were Pelicans, and that's why I grew up going to every LSU game, from baseball, basketball, football, growing up.
Yeah, the West Side's the best side. Did they say that back then?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've had plenty of. I don't know if it's still around. I don't think so. We used to go to Hubbins and Port Allen back back in the day, and the River Queen used to be like where we would
Yeah.
stop after church. So, oh yeah, we know it. And again, my dad's a cancer survivor, so he didn't get a chance to graduate college until at LSU until I was around 8 years old. So I grew up going to all of the games in the student section. So I think that's why I curse so well, and I think that's the reason why I'm also such a big LSU fan.
You got the essence of the LSU football experience in the student section for sure.
All of it for sure.
So LSU football has kind of given us whiplash over the last several years, right? From the greatest season of all time and everything we could have ever dreamed of to kind of bottoming out the last year. Brian Kelly becomes the head coach. Brian Kelly, the head coach of LSU, really? So a lot of things we could have never predicted, right? So what's your take on the team after 3 games into the year?
Yeah, to 3 games is kind of exactly what I thought it was going to be, Jock. I mean, it was the idea that there was going to be a lot of kind of fact finding, like, hey, we don't know who these guys are until we roll them out and we play a football game, and that there's still a lot of concerns about this offensive line. But I mean, again, I go back and look at how many people were on this team last year at the bowl game. What were there, like 40 players? I mean, you were playing a wide receiver at quarterback. This was basically Brian Kelly's first season of like, hey, anybody come want to play football here at Tiger Stadium? Come on. And I think he's trying to do his best with what he has in front of him. So, but again, I keep going back to the word fight. I feel like this team is fighting for Brian Kelly. And I think the big difference was when I saw how many smiles and this team reacted after a tough loss at FSU. Against FSU, I should say, and how Kayshawn was in a good mood, Malik was in a good mood, Baskerville, all these guys that had kind of rough games in week one bounced back with a good attitude in week two. That told me everything I needed to know about what's going on right now in the early start for this team.
To me, obviously, you want to win as many games as you can, have the best record as you can, but are they doing this at the end of the year? Are they doing this? I mean, are they moving towards better things in 2023 and 24 when Will Campbell and Emory Jones are kind of the faces of the team and the third-year guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, Jacques, this is a situation where it's like I'm okay taking the kind of the growing pains of having an offensive line. Like, get the young guys out. Like, by no means, I mean, did I ever think that this was going to be a 10-2 team or go on this incredible storybook run? To me, this was all about, hey, who are we going to find that's the future of LSU football? And more importantly, who don't we have that we need? I think Brian Kelly is a great recruiter. And like the least thing I'm worried about, honestly, is offensive line. You go back and look at the success that he had over at Notre Dame. They had monster offensive lines. I mean, that was where O-linemen wanted to go and wanted to play. The problem is I don't think they had the skill position guys to really kind of take it to that next level. So, to me, this is I kind of almost in a weird way, and this pains me because I live and die for LSU football all the time. I want to see some struggles to see how the team responds, how Brian Kelly grows them this year, and like, hey, pull the Band-Aid off. Like, what do you truly need to be a championship caliber to contending team like we saw in 2019? Because we haven't seen that in a while.
Yeah. And Brian Kelly, since he came aboard, I covered him in those Music City Bowl in 14, the Citrus Bowl in 2017. I walked away from it saying, you know what, Peter, I don't think I'm going to use a lot of this sound. It just wasn't all that great. And I'm like, this guy must not be great to cover. But I got to admit, since he got here, he's been pretty personable. I feel like he answers questions in press conferences. I feel like he talks football and speaks it well. And I feel like he compliments his players without making their heads get too big, and he explains what went wrong without the quote throwing under the bus. Everyone is so eager to say, "Oh, he threw me under the bus." Well, what's he supposed to say? You know, the left tackle broke down or whatever. I mean, he's got to explain what happened. So,
Yeah, I like that, Jacques. I mean, again, we haven't. I mean, accountability is a big thing, right? And I think that's the one thing is there's a fine line of throwing players underneath the bus, or there's a fine line of saying this is what went wrong and what are the expectations that you don't do it wrong anymore. Like you can't coddle these guys, you know, and it's a fine line that a coach has to walk right now, especially in the world of the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness. But again, you know, I feel like when Brian Kelly walks in a room, there is a feeling like he's like a CEO. Like he runs an organization, and that's what college football teams are. They're an organization top to bottom. So again, I think a lot of the things we're going to see with this program are behind the scenes. But again, that's what made Nick Saban so great at LSU and of course at Alabama is the behind the scenes stuff. He put guys in position through the behind the scenes stuff to be great on the field. And I don't know how much we've had that in Baton Rouge, heck, over the last 15 years since Nick left. And I think we're going to start seeing shades of that. And we're going to see growing pains this year, but I'm excited about it.
yeah, I mean, there have been some changes and there are some similarities to Saban and Kelly. Who's this guy coming up from the North? He's not as friendly, whatever, you know. During the radio show, they used to run up to the stage and get pictures and autographs. Now they can't do that. We bring up a few, so it's a little different in that regard. But
yeah,
once again, like you said, just win. And
but yeah, change is good. I don't care what you do. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, if you are in Slidell or you in Thibodaux or wherever or Port Allen, it doesn't matter. Like no one's going to care if you win the press conference. They want to know what the final score is, and I think that's a perfect way to look at last week's game against Mississippi State. I thought Mississippi State was going to win. I was impressed with them the first couple of weeks of the season. I thought defensively they were solid, and yet he brought in the right guys. I mean, Matt House deserved the game ball. That defense was awesome. And so the mark of a good coach is how do you scheme when you aren't necessarily the best team on the field quite yet? And I think that was one of those big wins. I mean, you flip it too, and you lose that game and all of a sudden you're 1-2 and you know LSU faithful, I mean they love you but they can also turn on you exactly quickly. That's the mark of a passionate fan base. So I don't think we can underscore how big that win was, and specifically the fourth quarter. I mean you're down in that game, you know, you go forward on fourth down, you get sacked, man, what happens? And all of a sudden they answer the bell and off to the races you go.
And Peter, we're here to talk about LSU, not Mississippi State. But from Mississippi State's perspective, for them to look at that game, they got to be nauseated watching that because they fumbled the punt. I mean, that might have been the biggest play of the game. They dropped numerous passes. Give LSU some credit. They might have sped those guys up a little bit where they're a little jittery or not or whatnot. But I was looking at their schedule, Peter. They got Mississippi State's got Bowling State at home, Texas A&M at home, and Arkansas at home. If they would have won the LSU game, they were really kind of set up to have a big year. And they may still win those games. I don't know, but that's a tough loss for them.
Well, and I think the difference maker too, Jacques, is having a full-throated LSU Tiger Stadium crowd that made a difference. And again, you know, that negates. People don't understand, like when in Las Vegas, a home team traditionally gets about 3 points. They bump up to about 4.5 every time LSU has a night game because of how great the fans are. And so, again, I think that was a difference maker. And again, that's why, you know, I know LSU fans were upset with the FSU game. Hell, I was, but man, like this is a team, like this is the most pivotal part of Brian Kelly's tenure at LSU, because how many recruits they're going to have on the sideline for each one of ththese games, even for a New Mexico game. Like you never know how you're going to flip a kid and he could be a difference maker down the road. So again, I like the fact when I get text from some of the announcers on the games, it'd be like, dude, every time I come here, I forgot how awesome it is.
Yeah, no doubt. So they got New Mexico this weekend as LSU, and then you're into a gauntlet of 6 straight SEC games. You know, they're going to go to Auburn next weekend. Auburn drop kicked into the 11 a.m. spot this week against Missouri. If they lose that game, TJ Finley's out. I mean, even if they wobble past Missouri and win by a touchdown or something, I'm going to be very interested to see what the atmosphere is going to be like when I go to Jordan-Hare in a couple of weeks, because it seems like, depending on the year, Gus Malzahn was either a genius or he was a dunce, depending on it was 2014 or 16 or whatever. And we all remember 2016, Auburn won the game. LSU didn't. I'm sitting at the Shed Barbecue in Mississippi, and Les Miles has been fired. Up, got to get home. So
Yeah.
I don't want to feed the narrative, Peter, of firing your coach barely into his second year, but there's a lot of smoke around this guy, obviously.
Well, yeah, and I mean, there has been for the day that he was hired again, but he also knew that when coming into that job is Auburn, not for the faint of heart. And even when I hear where Brian Harsin and kind of in between the lines, like I don't think it bothers Brian Harsin. I think he knew what he was stepping into, and I think he also knows with his athletic director Alan Green, the guy who hired him, is no longer there. I think he's a realist about, hey man, I got to win a bunch of football games, and if not, well then guess what? I'll probably be employed somewhere else. But that's the nature of what happens when you lose. And it was just kind of weird to see the way Auburn lost. Like there's no harm and foul in losing to a good, I think a top 15 team in Penn State, but to be pushed around in front of, in Jordan Hare, that's not the Auburn football that I've seen, really over the past 25 years or so.
Yeah, I saw Brian Harsin's quote, every weekend's a must win. It reminded me of Les Miles at the end of his tenure when they started getting the hot seat questions. And he said, I was on the hot seat after I lost to Tennessee, my first home game in 2005, when we blew a 21-0 lead. I mean, you really are kind of living week to week in this conference.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, again, everybody kind of says, oh, I feel so bad for these coaches. I'm like, they've got 2 commas in their annual salary. Like, I don't feel bad for them. Like, they know what the pros and cons. Like, if they don't want this heat and they don't want this smoke, then, go be an accountant or go be a rental car guy somewhere. Like, they know exactly what they're getting into. So, yeah, I'm not going to cry any river over coaches' buyouts. They, I don't think you or I have the same exact buyout that these collegiate coaches have.
Not exactly. Not exactly. And I've heard people say, oh, it's tough on the family. Hey, okay, I get it. The kids at school and stuff. But okay, we can buy a beach at Destin and we'll be okay.
Yeah. Ask Ed, Ogeron had the famous quote about like, hey, what time you want me out and what door you want me to use. Yeah, no truer words had ever been spoken.
Yeah, that Arkansas quarterback club, they get some good stuff up there.
I know. I'm a little worried because I'm going. They must be, looking at the bottom of the barrel as far as talent. Because I'm going up there in a couple of weeks, and I'm like, man, like all these big stars that are going. I mean, I'm gonna have to like make up some real good fake quotes coming up just to entertain because that Little Rock touchdown club has been fantastic.
Yeah, you'll do great. I remember, I think it was Bobby Petrino resurfaced for the first time after everything had happened. He was at that quarterback club.
Yeah, and he got a standing ovation. And I mean, I think that's, I think that was part of, kind of an interesting return back to Fayetteville last week when we saw, Petrino going back with that Missouri State team. And hell, they were up 17-0 if you remember that in Fayetteville last week. So that'd have been some awkward situation had Bobby Petrino gone into Fayetteville and actually won that game.
Pete, I think I'm going to find that Sam Pittman, less and less people are going to like him because he's going to be winning more and more. If you start winning and beating everybody, they don't like you as much. But I love Sam Pittman.
Yeah, people loved Dabo Swinney when he was, an 8-5 coach, or 8-4, and all of a sudden when he started winning, it's like, oh, I don't like Dabo Swinney. It's like any kind of band that gets big, but I think Sam is what you want out of a coach as far as being transparent and honest, and I think that's one of the things some of the coaches lose as they start having success is realizing like, hey, listen, man, like, us in the media and everybody else, we just want to know answers. And, sometimes they get a little standoffish when things get good. And we like the guys that are kind of humble and tell it the way it is and don't change. And that's hard not to, right? Like, I look at Les Miles. Les Miles, once you win a championship with Nick Saban's players, you're probably going to be different. I mean, Ogeron's living his best life after 2019. Like, it's tough not to change. I mean, that's just human nature.
Yeah. A few more things with the great Pete Burns. Yeah, everyone loved that hokey, or I won't say hokey, but that folksy Vanderbilt coach that came that one year. He was so great, and then he doesn't. He's out, right? So that's kind of how that goes. Jaden Daniels. I almost feel like fans aren't cheering as loud when he runs for 20 yards as if he throws it 20 yards. It's almost like this is cheating. We can't keep scrambling and running like this. So what do you make of him so far? He's a great kid, great family, and I think he's the best option for sure. I think that's clear.
Yeah, especially with the offensive line struggles right now, Jacques, right? I mean, I think that's the reason why they went with him versus Nussmeier is the fact that, hey, listen, if the play breaks down, who can make better plays with their feet? And I think they feel like it's with Jaden. And I think one of the things that we're seeing with Jaden, especially in these fourth quarters, is that as the game wears on and the game kind of slows down for him, he seems to be more comfortable looking to pass first and run first. It's almost like, okay, take a deep breath. This is it. Like, and we've seen that. We've seen them be able to throw the ball in big spots, but also take off and run. So, I mean, again, there's a lot of quarterbacks across, or a lot of teams right now in college football that would love to have a dual threat quarterback, and what Jaden Daniels are. I'd like to see them get the ball in the hands of Jack Besh a little bit more. I think Brian Kelly's talked a little bit about that, but that's part of the maturation process of a young quarterback.
Yeah, I think Jack Besh played 3 plays, I was told, all in the first half. This whole week it was targeted once. You don't want to be Brandon Cooks, complaining after your team wins, but at the same time, this guy caught 43 passes as a true freshman last year. He brings a lot of moxie, and when he catches the ball, he's going to run into you. So I think they need to target him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, and I think this is a perfect week against New Mexico to have that opportunity and try to do that a little bit more. And again, I mean, that's part of this coaching staff's responsibility with the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness is like, hey, there was a reason why as soon as Malik Neighbors missed, muffed those 2 punts against FSU, the first pass reception on that drive was to Malik Neighbors, and they got him involved against Southern. We saw Kayshawn get involved in Southern. Like, I think Brian Kelly's hyper aware of that, and I think that's part of the success that they'll have this weekend coming on the offensive side of the ball.
Big picture SEC, there's a new Alabama in the league, and their name is Georgia, right? I mean, we've got more problems here. It's not just the team in Tuscaloosa every year, and then Kentucky too.
Yeah.
They're not on LSU's schedule this year, but I was at that game last year. That wasn't pretty. So
Yeah, I mean, I think Kirby has just built the SEC East version of Alabama, and that they're not going to have any struggles as far as when it comes to kind of reloading, and that's what they do, and that's what I was hoping would happen after 2019, but a bevy of different factors didn't happen for LSU. But I mean, again, that's what and I think now people are like, oh, okay, Kirby's going to relax a little bit now. He's got one. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, he's going to be even more hyper crazy because he finally tastes that success and knows how sweet it is. And it's, he's got this bloodthirst. And this Georgia football team is, I think they're even better than last year's team, which is saying something because now they have a heartbeat on offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark Stoops, maybe he'll never be on Mount Rushmore somewhere, but very solid career there at Kentucky, what he's doing.
Oh, he's a hell of a coach. I mean, and again, he's a guy that's taken 3-stars and 4-star guys and turned them into a reputable program. And I think FSU probably should have hired him. And if I'm Nebraska, he would be the first phone call I would say no. But I don't know necessarily. I sure as heck don't want to lose him here in the SEC just because he's fun as hell to cover.
Yeah, Nebraska, that's a tougher sell than it used to be. It's cold. Being on national TV isn't what everyone's on national TV now. And how much can you sell the past to an 18-year-old kid? So
yeah, I mean, again, but that's one of the ones where name, image, and likeness, Jacques, could come through and really be a difference maker. I mean, you look at what's happening in Miami, same thing with Texas. These are former brands that are still that punch through. And I think that there's a lot of fans, like even when they lose, their fan base shows up. So, but again, are you going to hire a coach that's, that understands that they can use name, image, and likeness to their positive benefit? I'm not quite sure yet.
Yeah. Reminds me of South Carolina when they went 0-11 with Lou Holtz, I think his first year, and they sold out every game. They were packed every game. I mean, it's passionate.
Yeah. I mean, and again, that's you can't just build that overnight. And I mean, you have to start somewhere, and maybe it's more air conditioning deals for guys like DeColdest Crawford and stuff like that going forward.
DeColdest Crawford, outstanding. Okay, the last thing with you here, this SEC network, like I remember growing up going to the LSU Texas A&M game, for example, in 1990, and Todd Kinchin makes this little 2-yard catch, and he zigzags his way all the way, and I'm in the north end zone jumping up and down, and I go home and I want to see this, right? And so I remember putting on CNN, Headline Sports, Nick Charles and Fred Hickman, who worked here in Louisiana, and every maybe half hour or hour, that one clip, they played that one play had come on, and I'd watch it, and I'd go to bed. I think it's great now to be able to go home. You guys have kind of, put these into microwave dinners where we can watch highlights of each game that day and the reaction and everything. Just that, and what's it like to work at this network?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the things that it was a dream job that came up in 2014. When they said, "Hey, we're launching a new network," and I went up to Bristol, Connecticut, and interviewed for a bunch of different jobs, and all of the interviews and auditions went great, except the one for the SEC network. And I was so despondent because I was like, "Man, that's the one I really wanted." So, when I got the phone call going, "Actually, you made the final cut. Let's do some auditions," I was so nervous because I grew up being such a big LSU and SEC fan that I'm like, this is going to be the start of something big. And it ended up being the most historic cable launch channel in the history of cable television. And so, I just think that, we have an opportunity, to serve those passionate fan bases, and no fan base is more passionate than SEC fans. And I will say this, like, I thought it was going to be all football, but actually I think the best work that we do comes to in the spring, like when we got baseball and we got softball and we cover golf and we cover all those sports that traditionally weren't covered. I mean, my favorite thing each year is not college football season. It's when we go to Omaha in the SEC baseball tournament. I mean,
Yeah.
that is so much fun. And I think that's where I think we really kind of serve our viewers, and it's just it's fun as hell, man. I'm still happy that I'm collecting a paycheck and get an opportunity to do it, because it sure as hell doesn't feel like work. I'll tell you that.
Awesome. Yeah, and the women's sports have benefited greatly, I feel like.
Gymnastics. I mean, think about,
Yeah.
what's going to happen. And, and I've got a daughter who's getting ready to turn 5, and, an opportunity coming up to where Friday night lights, we'll watch that together. And I mean,
I think
that's a
it's Heights,
sporting
isn't
event.
it? Friday Night Heights.
Yeah, it's Friday Night Heights, but I mean, yeah, under those lights,
I
it's,
got
it's, it's, um, it's been a great run so far, and hopefully, and it's going to get even bigger now with Texas and Oklahoma coming to the conference here in a couple of years.
Yeah, Dee Bro talked about the coverage a lot, making it kind of like a football game. On Friday night, okay, there's gonna be a big gymnastics meet and the competition, LSU versus Florida, whoever it is, they're top 5 teams and all that.
And
So
it helps with recruiting. I've talked to so many softball coaches and baseball coaches who say, you know what, they're, if this kid's from California, they want to do that because they know every single one of these games are going to be available. So it's led to a lot of talent coming over to this neck of the woods, and and it's helped the conference overall.
Peter, thanks so much for your time, man. I know the LSU fans love you and appreciate you. Such a strong LSU presence there, too. If you had that many Alabama guys there, LSU fans would have, Booger McFarland, Marcus Spears, Todd Walker, Ben McDonald. It goes on and on, right?
Yeah, I mean, we had Kaylee Hartung as well. That was from Baton Rouge, and I remember, Jacob Hester came in a long time ago for an audition, and he crushed it. And Hester is one of my best friends, and I was like, because I wanted him, to get the job, and literally it was like, we just can't hire like the 15th LSU guy. They're like, we love them all, but he's like, you can hire Hester, but we're going to get rid of you. And I was like, nope, to hell with Hester. Let's get rid of Hester, and I want to keep my job. So sorry, Jacob, you're and he's still crushing it, so I don't feel too bad for him.
Yeah, if I'm Jacob Hester, I'm wondering if I'm ever paying for lunch, everywhere I walk in or whatever.
I'd wear my jersey every day in Baton Rouge, so I get those free lunches.
Good deal, man. Appreciate your time, Peter. Keep up the great work, and look forward to an exciting season moving forward.
Thanks, Jacques.